What if I told you that Darth Vader's suit wasn't just keeping him alive, but was slowly killing him? While millions of fans see the iconic black armor as a symbol of power, the truth is far more sinister. This wasn't just life support, it was a walking prison designed by Emperor Palpatine himself. Today, we're diving deep into every function of Vader's suit, from the needles piercing his flesh to the buttons that could end his life with a single press. Let's dive in. Let's start with the most recognizable piece, that terrifying helmet. Here's what most people don't realize. Vader's helmet wasn't just intimidating by accident. According to Star Wars Legends, the design was directly inspired by ancient Sith war gear, crafted from a deadly combination of durasteel, obsidian, and plastoid. The distinctive ridge ran from between his eyes all the way down the back of his skull. And here's where it gets dark. Rumor has it that the helmet was reinforced using dark side alchemy techniques that were completely absent from the Republic Medical Academy's database. This suggests Sith magic was literally forged into the metal itself. Inside that mask, Vader had needles, actual needles, piercing directly into his face every time he put it on. These weren't just for torture, though that was certainly a bonus for Palpatine. They transmitted brainwave activity directly to the central computer on his chest through a neural interface monitoring his thoughts 24/7. The triangular mouthpiece housed a complex breathing apparatus that regulated oxygen intake and filtered out contaminants like dust and toxic gases. The helmet also contained radar conduction pads to bleed off excess heat because, yes, Vader was literally overheating just from existing in that mechanical body. His bulbous red-tinted lenses provided infrared and ultraviolet vision, plus a heads-up display feeding him real-time environmental data, atmospheric toxicity, temperature, radiation levels, even biosignatures. The auditory sensors enhanced his hearing with sonic dampers that extended his range from 0 to 40 kilohertz. And get this, Vader could control many of these features with sensors aligned with his tongue and lips inside the mask. When entering intense light or hazardous situations, secondary eye shields would activate in no more than 5 milliseconds for protection. But perhaps most brutal of all, the helmet had an airtight seal with a neck brace that dug into his skin to keep it secure. This meant Vader couldn't remove it without being in a hyperbaric chamber. The physical design also restricted his peripheral vision, making movement and combat difficult. He was trapped inside his own head, in constant pain from the collar and partially blind. Now, let's talk about the most critical component of Vader's entire system, that chest control panel. This wasn't just some sci-fi decoration. This box controlled 90% of his suit's functions and quite literally kept him alive every second of every day. At the top left, you'll see 3 glowing red lines. From top to bottom, neural system display, respiratory system display, and pulmonary system display. These showed real-time status of his critical functions. If any of these failed, Vader was done. The terrifying part? Thousands of microneedles embedded throughout his flesh continuously collected this data, jabbing into his nerves like tiny torture devices. The top green button activated automatic control functions, essentially putting his life support on autopilot. The red button just below it was his manual override switch. One press and Vader could push past all safety limits, unleashing his full strength regardless of the consequences to his broken body. The blue button acted as a reset, restoring control to automated systems when he'd pushed too far. The chest unit had 3 slots that accepted RepMed data wafers, providing comprehensive diagnostics of all suit systems in under 200 milliseconds. For monthly maintenance, these diagnostic records were permanently archived. But the most crucial elements were the 4 switches located along the bottom of the control box. 3 of these were gray programming touch plates that gave Vader the ability to program the system and enabled greater control of his breathing, medicines, and painkillers. The 4th was the red system reset button. According to Darth Vader, a 3D reconstruction log, this was essentially his off switch. Press it, and his entire life support system would reboot, leaving him completely helpless during the process. And someone actually tried to exploit this. Antinous Tremaine, a Jedi turned Inquisitor, managed to hit the exact right button on Vader's chest panel during a confrontation. Vader collapsed, struggling to breathe, completely vulnerable. If Tremaine had been quicker, the Empire's reign of terror could have ended right there. Two shafts on either side functioned as life function sensor arrays, while two access ports at the rear could recharge the systems through cables connected to a fusion furnace. That belt around Vader's waist wasn't just holding his outfit together. It was packed with crucial survival technology. The silver electromagnetic clasp in the center wasn't just decorative, it was the anchor connecting all suit systems, wires, and microneedles together. It also contained audio enhancement sensors. The left system box contained respiratory controls with 6 gray knobs for manual adjustment, a red system active indicator, 2 green buttons for reset and manual toggle, and a gray rectangular CO2 vent. This allowed Vader to manually adjust his oxygen supply and, here's a chilling detail, turn off his breathing entirely. When he stalked Luke through Cloud City's dark corridors, he actually silenced his breathing to hunt in total silence. The right box housed temperature controls with similar green buttons, a heat vent, and manual adjustment knobs. This system was powerful enough to let Vader operate on the frozen surface of Hoth or the burning sands of Tatooine without additional protection, keeping his dead and decaying flesh cool. The clasp also held a compartment with emergency equipment, a spare energy cell for power failures, a backup comm link, and a toolkit for basic suit repairs. These weren't meant for long-term use, but they could keep him alive long enough to reach his meditation chamber or ship. The power core in his belt served as backup for the main chest control panel. Crucial, since if the chest panel was damaged, Vader could suffocate. After losing his right arm to Count Dooku during the Clone Wars and then both legs and his left arm to Obi-Wan on Mustafar, Vader's cybernetic replacements were both a blessing and a curse. His natural limbs now ended in bulbous grafts of flesh connected to sophisticated machines. Neural links implanted in the stumps interfaced with his damaged nerve endings, allowing conscious control. Servo motors mimicked human joint movements, rotation in wrists, ankles, and knuckles, powered by hydraulic fluid that required monthly replenishment and piston realignment. The strength was incredible. Vader could adjust the servo drivers and pistons in his forearms to crush nearly anything he grasped. He could even crush the impenetrable hilt of his own lightsaber if needed. He could lift an adult being off the ground using arm strength alone, and his mechanical legs enabled powerful leaps over considerable distances. But here's what made it torture. The limbs were never properly fused to Vader's body because they were regularly removed for back-to-tank sessions. This caused terrible phantom limb pain that he struggled to ignore. The legs were also deliberately larger than Anakin's natural ones, and far heavier than necessary, making him feel constantly burdened and rooted to the ground. Initially, Vader's walking gait was slow and deliberate. The lower legs, constructed from durable Durasteel alloy and reinforced with armor strips, had to support his heavy armor. The boots adhered magnetically to his artificial limbs and contained a ferromagnetic core activated by mouth-operated controls, generating magnetic fields to cling to starship hulls, essentially turning him into Spider-Man when needed. But the boots were poorly fitted to his artificial feet with claw-like toes that lacked electrostatic sensitivity. The raised heels canted him forward, forcing exaggerated caution to avoid toppling over. As Vader himself described it in Dark Lord, the rise of Darth Vader. What good was motion of this sword if he was going to have to call on the Force, even to walk from place to place? The pneumatic mechanisms were sometimes slow to respond, and like all systems, they were prone to malfunctions causing spasms and jolts of intense pain. In his own words, he thought, "This is not walking." Long accustomed to building droids and upgrading mechanisms, he was dismayed by what he saw as the incompetence of his reconstruction. Beneath that imposing exterior, Vader wore what was essentially a high-tech torture device. The multi-layered bodysuit combined Durasteel and plastoid in the outer armor, providing resistance to blaster fire and lightsaber strikes, though repeated hits in the same spot would eventually break through. The bodysuit consisted of 10 layers, each subdivided into 3 primary sections. The first was a self-sealing surface functioning like standard Imperial military suits. The second included Rayflex cellular padding, polychlorophene fiber weave, orthofabric, mylar laminate, and a rechargeable energy suit for impact protection. The third regulated pressure and temperature with plastic pressure garments and compression sheaths. The shoulder armor alone weighed 12.2 kilograms and offered resistance against blasters and energy blades. However, this weight made it nearly impossible for Vader to raise his lightsaber to full height or lift his arms above his head without immense difficulty and force assistance. The inner lining contained a massive array of biomechanical sensors linking back to his helmet, plus healing agents that managed his injuries. But here's the cruel irony. These agents didn't actually heal anything. They just prevented his wounds from getting worse while constantly rubbing against his burned skin, causing endless irritation. Hidden within the suit was a cartridge in his right collarbone containing coanin, a synthetic neurotoxin derived from Cohen centipedes, designed to reduce his perception of pain during times of great stress. Perhaps most disturbing was the synthetic skin that replaced what was seared from his bones on Mustafar. This artificial flesh itched incessantly, driving him toward madness. His body required periodic cleansing by medical droids to scrub away necrotic tissue. The smell alone must have been horrific. And all of this was by design. Palpatine could have given Vader technology like General Grievous's advanced robotics, but he deliberately chose antiquated, uncomfortable tech. The more uncomfortable Vader was, the more angry he became, fueling his connection to the dark side while ensuring he remained dependent. That flowing black cape wasn't just for dramatic effect, though it certainly achieved that. Made from armor-weave material, it provided crucial protection from environmental damage, including fire and acid, while allowing freedom of movement. The cape acted as a protective barrier, minimizing the risk of grit and contaminants entering the suit's sensitive electronics. Sometimes it would flutter for typical Vader-style dramatic effect, and yes, he probably had this customized because even Sith Lords appreciate good presentation. Beneath the cape sat a flat backpack containing compressed air connected to his helmet's air regulation systems. This backup air processing system was essential. If it failed, Vader would suffocate within minutes. Vader's gloves were technological marvels in their own right. Crafted from micronized Mandalorian armor weave, they could withstand glancing lightsaber strikes and deflect blaster bolts, as we famously saw when Han Solo shot at him in Cloud City. But here's the incredible part. Vader's right glove was constructed using indestructible Sith amulets infused with dark side essence. This allowed him to absorb energy directly, meaning he could use the Force to predict blaster bolt trajectories and simply extend his right hand to intercept and absorb them effortlessly. Both gloves had magnetic clasps that secured to his prosthetic tubing and contained grip augmentation circuitry. They also had extra padding to give him better tactile sense with his cybernetic arms. Crucial, given his limited mobility and the fact that the elbow-length sleeves didn't fit snugly on his prosthetics, often sagging and bunching at the wrists. Let's talk about the most fundamental aspect of Vader's existence, simply staying alive. After inhaling hazardous gases and suffering severe lung damage on Mustafar, every breath became a mechanical process controlled by an iron lung with a concealed flat backpack. The helmet's air pump maintained continuous purified airflow to his damaged lungs through a flat filter system. A backup air processing filter was built into that distinctive mouth grill. Thick cables connected from the chest panel to a breathing apparatus and heartbeat regulator implanted in his scarred chest, with tubes running directly into his damaged lungs and throat. His scorched vocal cords required an enunciator and electronic voice processor to create that deep, synthetic bass tone we all recognize. The vocabulator was electronically linked to his voice processor, which interfaced with his damaged vocal cords to make speech possible. Without the enunciator, his voice was little more than a whisper. Eating was torture. Vader could consume food orally, but only in a hyperbaric chamber with his mask removed, and it caused excruciating pain due to his scarred throat and esophagus. More often, he relied on intravenous feeding from an implanted bladder containing RepMed Vita paste, a highly efficient but disgusting nutrient source. The hermetic collar around his neck served multiple functions. It supported his helmet, protected his cybernetic vertebrae, and contained feeding straws that drew this paste directly into his system. And yes, we have to address the uncomfortable reality of waste management. The suit included what was essentially a mechanical diaper, a waste recycler that broke down food and processed it into a compartment, then vaporized it completely. Catheters and collection pouches handled liquid waste, all requiring regular cleaning by medical droids to prevent infections in his already weakened body. The incessant rasp of his breathing interfered with his ability to rest, let alone sleep. And when sleep did come, it was a nightmarish jumble of twisted, recurrent memories, unfolding to the excruciating sounds of his own mechanical existence. The psychological toll of living in this mechanical prison was immense. Vader experienced severe claustrophobia and desperate moments where he just wanted to be rid of the suit to emerge from its shell. To address this, he commissioned specialized meditation chambers. These hyperbaric pods provided pressurized, medicated, and oxygenated air, allowing Vader to remove his helmet for brief periods. We saw one aboard his massive Star Dreadnought Executor in The Empire Strikes Back. Motion-sensitive controls and servo lifts operated the chamber, and he was adamant about maintaining privacy during these vulnerable moments. Vader also had bacta tanks where he would float as just a torso, meditating more quietly while his cybernetic limbs were removed for maintenance. These sessions were essential for his survival, but they also meant his mechanical parts could never be 100% interfaced with his organic body. His body never truly accepted them. As he described it, he needed to build a chamber in which he could feel human again, if at all possible. The fact that he could only feel human in a specialized medical chamber speaks volumes about his daily suffering. Even his attempts to use the Force to sustain his body without the suit failed completely. Here's the most sinister aspect of Vader's suit design. It was deliberately vulnerable to electrical attacks. And who was the galaxy's biggest fan of Force lightning? Emperor Palpatine himself. This wasn't an oversight or design limitation. Palpatine built this weakness into every system. Vader secretly tried to reinforce parts of his suit with electrical insulators, but it was never enough. The Emperor made sure his apprentice knew the truth. At any time I wish, I can end you. The suit's electrical systems were so sensitive that even a single button press could deactivate the entire system. The inferior alloy used in his leg prosthetics caused additional problems, with snags in the bodysuit that further impeded his movement. In the end, this fatal flaw led to Vader's death. When he threw Palpatine into the Death Star's reactor to save Luke, the Emperor's Force lightning didn't even need to be directly aimed at him. The sheer electrical energy was enough to completely fry Vader's life support systems. The very systems that had kept him alive for over 2 decades became his tomb. So there you have it. Every function of Darth Vader's suit explained in complete detail. What seemed like the ultimate symbol of power was actually the most sophisticated torture device ever created. The chosen one, destined to bring balance to the Force, had become a walking nightmare trapped in his own mechanical body. If this deep dive into Vader's technological prison fascinated you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Until next time, may the Force be with you, and thanks for watching.